for our crop of the week special. And so this week's feature crop that we are going to take you from seed all the way to plate with is scallions, or green onions, or bunching onions, or spring onions. There's so many different names that people have for this crop, but it's ultimately young onions that we're harvesting, and that's, you know, a lot of times it's the early harvest, the spring harvest of onions, and then they're so versatile in the kitchen. It's really an accent crop to a lot of the other things that you're growing. And so we're just getting into summer here. The days are at their longest right now. So much is really starting to take off in the gardens. We've got tomatoes that we'll be harvesting in no time. We just harvested some of our first cucumbers. And so all of the spring crops are still in, and we have just been able to put so much use in the kitchen. And I'm sure that wherever you may be, if you're shopping at farmers markets or if you have a garden yourself, this is one of the most exciting times when you start getting enough food in the garden to be able to really put together some nice meals. And an important piece to that are those crops that you can raise that add a lot of flavor and act as a nice accent to everything else that you're growing or raising. And scallions are definitely an example of that. Scallions, we grow them at a high density again on our 30-inch beds. And there's two ways you can grow scallions. You can start them as seeds in a nursery and get them started and then transplant into a bed, or you can direct sow. Last year we attempted to direct sow, and our beds, we had a lot of weed pressure just because it was our first year establishing the beds, and we really struggled with the scallions because of that. Scallions and onions in general do not germinate really quickly, and so what was happening to us is we were direct sowing, and then we were having weeds come in, and onion plants, scallions are probably the most pronounced for this, really start out when you're planting them from seed very small, and it's almost hard to see them, and they're kind of weak and spindly. And so because of that, as the weeds were coming up, we just really struggled to get any beds of our scallions established and growing to maturity. So this year we did start our scallions in trays. We started them in 128 cell trays in the nursery, and got them started and got them up to about 2 to 3 inches in height. And at that point, the plants were just really well established. The roots were starting to establish and really form a nice mesh with the cell. And so when we pulled the plugs out and transplanted, they had a kickstart. We were transplanted into well-prepared beds where we had already cultivated and really tried to get all of the weeds out. And then they took off and really started growing again as these days have started getting longer. They've taken off for us, and we've just been able to start harvesting in the last 3 weeks or so. So we're at one of the beds right now, and you can see what we've done in this bed is we planted them. We had 6 rows with about 5-inch planting, or 5 inches in between each plant, and so it's pretty high density. Makes it so that we can have a lot on a small square footage, and then makes harvesting really easy too, because what we do when we harvest scallions is harvest them and then bunch them together in bunches of about a dozen, and then that's what we sell at our farm stand and at market. And harvesting is so easy. It's one of the activities. Scallions is a nice one to get the kids involved with, because all you're really doing is pulling the onions up, and then you know, in our case, we've got we let a couple, when we transplant them, if there was 3 or 4 in the cell, we allowed them all to grow. We didn't thin them at all, and so it just creates kind of a little bunch that's easy to harvest. And then, like I said, when you get about a dozen, bunch them together, and that's the way we're able to sell them. So I'll pull one up here just so that you can get an idea of what it looks like when you're pulling it out of the ground and harvesting, and then we'll take you into the kitchen and show you what we do post-harvest and some great ways to use it as an accent for various dishes, and in this case tacos in the kitchen. So with scallions, all you're doing is gently grabbing the plant and very gently pulling it up out of the soil, and you can see the nice root structure that the plant gets. And when you're harvesting them as baby greens before they've shot up a flower or anything, there's really no need to even trim them. And it just makes a really delicious onion flavor to any dish that you use it in. And again, about a dozen or so makes a nice bunch for selling. A lot of times in recipes, we only end up using 2 or 3. So in our case, we'll oftentimes come out, pull it right out of the garden, straight into the kitchen, a quick little rinse and minced up and right onto the plate.
All right, well, good morning everyone. We are going to be cooking with our green onions today. And as Steve mentioned when we were out in the garden, they are part of the allium family. So I wanted to actually just give you a quick look at what the seeds look like. So they're just tiny little seeds here. And as with all members of the allium family, so garlic, chives, scallions, leeks, you do want to be a little bit more mindful of where you plant them. They do not react well with beans and peas and things in the legume family, but they can be a great companion plant for especially some of the root crops because they have pretty shallow roots, you can see, and so it's really good to interplant them with some carrots or beets. They actually are a great plant to go with some cabbages. They help deter some of the pests. So again, they're great in the garden, but they're also great in the kitchen. They have so many health benefits. It's a very nutrient dense food. So while some people think of really just adding them for color and for a garnish, they really actually add a lot of vitamin K, vitamin C, great fiber, while they're still a really low calorie food. So we'll talk about preparing them quickly. As Steve mentioned, we often will just go pull 2 or 3 from the garden to add to our dish, do a quick little rinse off, and then all you really need to cut off are these very, very bottom parts with the roots here, and really you can use the entire rest of the green onion. So we'll just kind of line those up so we can cut multiple at once. So cut off that very bottom section here, put that in your compost, and then just slice away. And so we usually do them pretty thin. Again, we're usually using them to add to the top of a dish, so like in a salad or a saute, an egg scramble, frittata. Today we are actually going to add them on the top of breakfast tacos. So it's a favorite dish for our kids, but they go so well in so many different types of cuisine. They're a staple in a lot of Asian dishes. They actually originated in China, and so you'll find them in a lot of Japanese dishes, Korean dishes, a lot of Mexican dishes. So we add them quite often. I'd say maybe not quite every day, but every other day we probably have green onions going into something. All right, and here we are with our breakfast tacos. The kids are ready to eat. So we'll just sprinkle some of our green onions on here. Again, normally they're more of kind of an accent to a dish, but there are some cases where you can actually feature it as a whole dish. There are some green onion latkes you can make, some green onion soup. You can actually even grill them whole with some olive oil, salt, and pepper and make them a larger feature in your meal. But for us, this adds a great aroma and color, flavor. This will be perfect for today. Enjoy.